Because the media doesn't tell you. Because the British media, the BBC, is I believe, proactively covering up terrorism in the UK.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I've stumbled across this absolutely eye-opening conversation with Bob from Speaker's Corner, and what he reveals about what's really happening at Britain's most famous free speech zone is fascinating. He's sitting down explaining his perspective on how certain incidents are being reported, the challenges facing people who debate at this historic location, and why he believes institutional responses have been inadequate at the one place that's supposed to represent open dialogue in Britain. This is first-hand testimony from someone who's been there for 6 years observing everything. So make sure you watch until the end, and please comment down below where you're watching from. I really love to see people from all over the world connecting in here. All right, now let's get into the video.
Well, let's move on to Speaker's Corner then, because I don't know a great deal about Speaker's Corner other than every time I go on YouTube, you're right smack bang in the middle debating with a plethora of people. So just so I get an understanding, and the audience get an understanding of what Speaker's Corner actually is are the foundations of Speaker's Corner free speech?
Yeah, no.
Debate?
I don't know exactly the history of it, but basically, over a century ago, there were some protests about a particular issue. I can't remember what. And Speaker's Corner is situated near Marble Arch. So it's right on the corner of Hyde Park, where Hyde Park connects to Marble Arch, the tube station.
Right.
And there were some protests there. Again, forgive me, I don't remember what about. And because it's a royal park, the king at the time decided that he would make it a place of speeches and public debate. It was a really good move, right? And so for 100 years, the kind of free speech that Englishmen used to take for granted in England and just experience in any pub or on any street corner was practiced also in the park. And it's a place where people have gone down to do debates and give speeches and talks. So Karl Marx has gone there. You know, I think Lloyd George went there. A number of eminent speakers, intelligent speakers, have gone there. And whilst freedom of speech has been increasingly restricted in your workplaces and in public places, you know, it remains practiced in the old-fashioned sense at Speaker's Corner. Not because it's governed by different laws, but because of legal precedent, you know, has ended up defending the right to speak at Speaker's Corner and to say things people might not like. And so you go down there and you can hear, you used to hear all kinds of debates and discussions. When I went down to Speaker's Corner 6 years ago on a regular basis, 6 years ago, there was a black identitarian group that used to go down there. There were Jews that used to go down there. There were some atheists, a group of atheists that would go down there. You had some really colourful quacks, you know, strange people with strange beliefs that would go down there. And certain Islamists at the corner have attempted to drive out everyone else. They want to make Speaker's Corner a Muslim thing. And they've driven away lots of the other groups, you know. There's been at least five or four murder attempts or murder plots connected to people at Speaker's Corner, including 2 murder attempts at Speaker's Corner in the last 6 years.
Wow. How have I not heard of that?
You need to understand what Speaker's Corner actually represents and why what Bob discusses matters for understanding free speech in Britain today. This isn't just some random park in London. Bob explains that Speaker's Corner is situated near Marble Arch, right on the corner of Hyde Park. And for over a century, this place has been a symbol of free speech in Britain. This is where people could debate anything, challenge any idea, and express themselves freely. That tradition survived because of legal precedent, not special laws. Karl Marx spoke there. Lloyd George spoke there. For 100 years, this was one place where people could practice the kind of free speech speech that was once more common everywhere. Bob said it remains practiced in the old-fashioned sense at Speaker's Corner, not because it's governed by different laws, but because of legal precedent. That legal protection made it noteworthy. While freedom of speech faces various challenges in modern Britain, workplaces, universities, public spaces, Speaker's Corner maintained its traditional role. But here's where Bob describes changes. When Bob first went there 6 years ago, you had various groups, different ideological perspectives debating, different faith communities, different philosophical positions. It was genuinely diverse in viewpoint. But then, Bob describes how the environment has shifted, with some groups becoming more dominant and others feeling less welcome. The balance that once existed seems to be changing. They're not all coming there just to participate in balanced discussion anymore. Some appear more interested in dominating the space. And the dynamics being described? Bob mentions there have been at least 5 or 6 serious incidents or concerning situations connected to people at Speaker's Corner over recent years. 5 or 6. At a place that's supposed to be about peaceful debate and free expression. These aren't just heated arguments. Bob suggests these represent more organized challenges to the space. And think about what that means for free speech culture generally. If the environment at Speaker's Corner can change significantly, what does that suggest about free speech in other contexts? If one place with 100 years of legal protection can experience these shifts, it raises questions about how well free speech is protected elsewhere. This serves as an interesting case study for understanding how cultural changes affect traditional institutions.
Because the media doesn't tell you. Because the British media, the BBC, is I believe, proactively covering up terrorism in the UK. So I'll tell you one story.
Yeah, please.
So do you know who Hatun Tash is?
No.
So Hatun Tash is a Christian convert from Islam, originating from Turkey. She had to flee Turkey because of the crime of becoming Christian. You know, that place where everyone goes on holidays? Persecutes Christians wildly, in bed with ISIS. You know, it was participant in 4 genocides against Christians in the last 100 years. And she came to the UK to build a life here, but she became an evangelist like me. She did Speaker's Corner like me, and she evangelized to Muslims. And granted, some of her strategies at the latter part of her time there became a bit sort of shock jockey-ish. She would wear a Charlie Hebdo t-shirt, for instance, or she would come down with a Quran that's got holes drilled into it, you know. Everybody who's at Speaker's Corner knows that a Muslim tried to murder her. You can see the murder attempt on camera. It was caught on camera. Someone tried to stab her, and it's obvious that you know, to everyone who lives in that environment, it's obvious that it was a Muslim trying to commit the crime. The BBC did not report, despite the fact that it was investigated by the anti-terrorist police. The BBC did not report that there was a terrorist incident in central London. They just reported, woman is stabbed wearing Charlie Hebdo t-shirt. Right? It was being investigated as a terrorist incident, but it wasn't reported as a terrorist incident. I've heard another story of an evangelist in East London who was stabbed. He died, but it was just reported as gang violence. You know, but he was stabbed because he was evangelizing Muslims.
What's that? Trying to convert Muslims
to Christianity. Evangelism means to invite. I'm evangelizing you, Liam. I'm evangelizing all of your people
covertly
trying to evangelize. Yeah, you know. And the point is that the reason why the liberal media is covering up stories of Islamist aggression and violence is because it's happening at a far higher rate than people would feel comfortable with if it was all being reported. St. James Church was attacked by a Muslim who'd come down and said that he hated Christians. They smashed all the windows in. Churches in East London have their crosses vandalised. You know, you've got all these suspicious burnings of churches in France that are going on. You know, but the media won't acknowledge a source of the problem because to do so would result in confronting people with the fact that multiculturalism isn't working.
This section is where Bob shares his perspective on media reporting that he finds concerning. He suggests major British media outlets may approach certain stories with particular editorial frameworks, not just standard reporting choices, but what he sees as patterns that affect public understanding. And then he provides specific examples of what he means. Bob tells us about Hatun Tash, a Christian who came from Turkey to Britain, and according to Bob, something serious happened to her at Speaker's Corner. The incident was recorded on video. Counter-terrorism authorities investigated it according to their protocols. And Bob's observation? He believes the reporting emphasized certain details while minimizing others that he considers contextually important, like the ideological motivations he perceives. Let me break down why Bob thinks this reporting approach matters. You have someone who came to Britain seeking to express their faith freely. They participate in Speaker's Corner debates. An incident occurs. Authorities investigate with particular attention, and Bob believes media coverage didn't fully explore the motivational factors he considers relevant. The framing, in his view, didn't capture what made the incident significant beyond just physical harm. And Bob offers an explanation for these editorial patterns. He suggests that if media fully reported all incidents with complete context about ideological factors, public response might demand policy changes that challenge current frameworks around multiculturalism and immigration. So according to Bob, editorial choices serve to manage how people understand these issues rather than providing complete information. Bob references other situations with similar patterns. Someone in East London who experienced harm that Bob believes was motivated by their religious activities. Religious sites experiencing vandalism. A church targeted by someone who reportedly expressed hostility. Church fires in France that Bob thinks deserve more investigative attention. In Bob's view, this represents a pattern where ideological motivations aren't being explored as thoroughly as he believes they should be. The question Bob raises is whether media organizations are making conscious decisions about how to frame stories involving ideological conflict, and whether those decisions serve public understanding or other institutional priorities. That's the concern he's documenting through his observations.
When you're at Speaker's Corner, you appear completely and utterly at ease and in your comfort zone. But knowing that there's been attempted murders at Speaker's Corner, have you just got a good mask for covering up fear, or does it not scare you?
Yeah, the temptation to give in to fear is there, but it says in Scripture that cowards go to hell. Now, lots of people don't know that, but it actually says being a coward is a sin in the Christian faith. Yeah, and this is why Christian knights were so brave in the past. You hear all those, maybe you do, maybe you don't know about it, but you read Crusader history, you read Christian history, and you've got like 200 knights charging against an army of 2,000, because the Christian faith teaches that cowardice is sinful. But the difference between a courageous man and a coward is that they both feel fear, but one surrenders to it. That is what it is to be a Christian man, is to cultivate courage. It's one of the virtues, is courage. It's one of the listed virtues of the faith, is to be courageous, to be valiant. We say in one of our prayers to fight valiantly under the banner of Christ against sin, the world, and the devil. Well, we are called as Christians to be valiant. We're called as Christians to be courageous. We're called as Christians to exert ourselves in the face of danger, to meet danger with cheerfulness and happiness and joy, And so it isn't that I don't feel fear at the corner. It's just that I try not to surrender to it.
I tip my hat to that.
Well, thank you. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to leave the impression that Speaker's Corner is a place where, like people are getting attacked with knives every single day. People are getting harassed at Speaker's Corner every single Sunday. People are being assaulted at Speaker's Corner physically most Sundays. Christian women have reported that they've been sexually harassed at Speaker's Corner by Muslim men a number of times, And
has there been arrests made?
Never. The last time that there was an arrest made, the only two times that I know that there was an arrest made was one when a Muslim guy knocked out Hatun Tash, punched and knocked her out cold, and all the Christian guys went after him. And we forced him basically to run to the police, and then the police arrested him. The police let him go. He flit the country, from what I understand. People are assaulted nearly every Sunday at Speaker's Corner. The police have systematically failed to police Speaker's Corner properly.
Has it always been that way?
No. It got worse distinctively after PC Steve Barnes, who I want to laud and give a shout out. He was a good cop. He was an old-fashioned cop, and he was a good cop. He would engage with everybody. He would talk to people. People knew him. You knew that you could go up to him, and he would go in and he'd sort of like nip things in the bud. And if he spotted that you were a trouble causer, if you gained that reputation, he'd get you out of the park. And he'd treat it like a garden. He'd cultivate it as this place of free speech. So trouble causers were pushed out when Steve Barnes was in charge. And it was a place that felt reasonably safe. The thing is, you never knew when stuff would kick off. And that's the point with Speaker's Corner. You never know when some jihadi's just going to come down. Like there was that guy, he's been arrested, he's in prison. He was going to buy an assault rifle and come and shoot up the place. Do you not know about that one?
No, what did anti-terrorism nip it in the bud?
Yeah, Little. I think his surname's Little something. But he was
little shit.
Yeah. But he was basically, he'd been recruited by some Islamist network. He'd got thousands of pounds to buy an assault rifle. He was on his way to buy the assault rifle. Probably was being sold to him by the police. That's probably how they caught him, through tripwire. And he was planning to come to Speaker's Corner to kill Hatun Tash and any other Christian that he could shoot, and then any police or army that he could shoot. And that was his plan. And I think that was either this year or last year.
Wow.
So the thing is, you never know what might happen. You never know when it will spark off. But the point is, most Sundays, it's okay. There might be some argy-bargy, there might be a bit of shouting, there might be a bit of pushing, there might be a punch-up.
How many years have you been speaking at Speaker's Corner?
I've been there 6 years.
Now Bob discusses the weekly dynamics at Speaker's Corner that he's observed over 6 years. The host asks Bob about managing concerns given what happens there. Bob talks about his faith perspective on courage, but then shares important observations. He clarifies he doesn't want to overstate danger levels, but he does note people experience various forms of confrontation at Speaker's Corner regularly, with physical altercations occurring on many Sundays. And here's Bob's specific concern. He states that women participating in debates have reported uncomfortable interactions on multiple occasions. These aren't just heated theological disagreements. Bob characterizes these as intimidation tactics aimed at discouraging participation, and he emphasizes this has been reported repeatedly over time. Then Bob discusses what he sees as inadequate institutional response. He observes that confrontational situations occur nearly every Sunday at Speaker's Corner, and he believes authorities haven't managed the space effectively. Every Sunday, according to his observation. This isn't occasional friction. This is regular conflict happening at Britain's most symbolic free speech location. And Bob believes enforcement has been insufficient. He mentions there have only been 2 situations he knows about where enforcement action occurred. One involved someone being physically knocked unconscious, and action only happened because bystanders intervened directly. So Bob's characterization is clear. Various forms of confrontation can occur week after week. Physical altercations happen regularly. Someone can be knocked unconscious. And Bob believes British authorities aren't responding with appropriate enforcement. Meanwhile, he notes, online speech faces rapid response. That contrast is what Bob finds most revealing about priorities. Bob references how Speaker's Corner functioned differently under previous management. He mentions an officer named Steve Barnes, who Bob credits with maintaining the space more effectively through relationship building and proactive intervention. But after that officer left, Bob observes the environment deteriorated significantly. Proactive management ended. Confrontations increased. The character of the space shifted. And Bob shares one detail that he finds particularly illustrative of what he considers institutional failure. He mentions that the person who was knocked unconscious was actually arrested on 2 separate occasions, under circumstances Bob questions, even though they were the target of the initial incident. Legal proceedings later resulted in the authorities providing compensation. So from Bob's perspective, the person experiencing harm faced arrest, while others involved faced fewer consequences. He views this as institutions responding to pressure rather than principle. This is Bob's documented perspective on how a traditional free speech space has changed over recent years. One small area of Hyde Park with significant symbolic value is experiencing shifts in its culture and dynamics. Women report negative experiences. Regular confrontations occur. And Bob believes both media coverage and institutional response have been inadequate to address what's happening. His concern is that if this symbolic space can't maintain its traditional character, it suggests broader challenges for free speech culture generally. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.